Okay, we're back. Okay, so Jude, in the book of Jude, his name's actually Judah, same as Judas. Their names would have been Judah, Jude, Yeshua's brother. So Judah says, but these blaspheme that which they do not know. In context here is he's talking about people who go astray in the same way that Korah goes astray. And that which they know naturally, like unreasoning beasts, in these they corrupt themselves. Okay, so the examples that he gives that these people are like, he says, woe to them because they've gone in the way of Cain and gave themselves to the delusion of Balaam, for a reward, and perished in the rebellion of Korach. So people who are like these people, Cain, who killed his brother who was walking in righteousness. Cain decided that he was going to kill him, that he was unfavorable to him. The delusion of Balaam, who wanted to go after these men, who wanted to honor him. Balaam wants to follow after them. We'll see that in a couple of weeks, but Balaam wants to go. Yahovah says, no, you cannot go with these men unless this happens, and Balaam just ends up going anyway. And the rebellion of Korach, all of these people are like people who blaspheme that which they do not know. That is to speak against, to blaspheme something, speak against the name of that which they do not know, and that which they know naturally, so the things in their flesh, like unreasoning beasts, in these they corrupt themselves. So again, Cain, who was all angry at his brother, the flesh coming out there. Balaam, who wanted to go and get his reward, like an unreasoning beast. And Korach did not understand the priesthood that Yahovah had put in place. What he wanted was the priesthood for himself. He didn't understand why Moses and Aaron were the ones that Yahovah had put in leadership. So he said, I want to be in leadership myself, like an unreasoning beast. 1 Corinthians 2:12-14 says, and we have received not the spirit of the world, but the spirit that is from Elohim, the spirit of holiness, in order to know what Elohim has favorably given us, which we also speak, not in words which man's wisdom teaches, but which the set-apart Spirit teaches, comparing spiritual matters with spiritual matters. But the natural man does not receive the matters of the Spirit of Elohim, for they are foolishness to him, and he is unable to know them, because they are spiritually discerned. So, thinking of people who want to go after whatever nonsense it is, we saw in the first part that there are those who are raised up by Yehovah, and there are those who are raised up by men. And following after those who are raised up by men, or who raise themselves up before men, may well make sense, as we saw with Moses and Yitro, because they speak in words that the Spirit doesn't teach. They speak in words that men like unreasoning beasts would understand, which man's wisdom teaches. But the set-apart Spirit, the Holy Spirit, teaches something different. So when we're considering people who go after nonsense, it may well be because they don't walk after the Spirit of Elohim. What appeals to them is man's wisdom. And the wisdom which is from Elohim is not something that they can receive. So we shouldn't try to run after these people and convince them, oh no, you need to turn back to this. This is the truth. Leave it in Elohim's hands. Elohim can make someone stand. He can make them fall. If something is of Elohim, you don't want to stand against it. If it's not of Elohim, it won't go anywhere, or it will achieve that which Elohim wanted to establish it for. So running after these people is not the wise thing to do, because what appeals to them is that which they can receive, that which they can understand, which is of the flesh, is man's wisdom. So Numbers 16 verse 3 says, they assembled against Moshe and against Aharon. So this is Korah, it's Dathan, it's Aviram, and in the second verse we have a guy called On, who is mentioned here, but later he does not appear to be involved in the rebellion. Okay, but as Korah comes up and he rebels, those people who were dwelling close to him decided, that makes sense, we'll follow after Korah. So here they're assembling against Moses and against Aaron, and they say to them, enough of you. Okay, and that's an interesting phrase. It's Rav Lechem. Okay, not Lechem like bread, but Rav is the word from which we get rabbi from. Okay, it's somebody who has made themselves great. Okay, this idea of greatness is translated here, enough of you. Okay, so Rav Lechem, for all the congregation is set apart, all of them, and Yehovah is in their midst. Why then do you nasa yourselves before the assembly of Yehovah? Why do you make yourselves nasieh before the assembly of Yehovah? Because we're all holy, everyone, and Yehovah's in all of our midst. So why is it that you have nasad yourself? Of course, they didn't nasa themselves. Yehovah was the one who nasad them. He lifted them up. He put them in this position. But the rebels, they just look at them and they say, enough of you. Why have you done this? And we'll see that phrase again, that Rav Lechem, because Moshe throws it right back at them. Hebrews 5, 1-4 says, for every priest taken from among men is appointed on behalf of men. Again, not what the rulers of the Gentiles or those people who want to lift themselves up and make themselves an Nasieh do. Okay, they appoint themselves to rule over men. In Yehovah's system, it's different. Every priest is taken from among men, okay, is lifted up by Yehovah, is appointed on behalf of men to serve men. That's what the priesthood did. They were serving the people of Israel. Someone from the outside might have looked upon the priests and they might have said, I want to be a priest. I want to do this. I want to be in the position of leadership, not because they want to serve people, but because they want to serve themselves. In matters relating to Elohim, to offer both gifts and offerings for sins, being able to have a measure of feeling for those not knowing and being led astray, since he himself is also surrounded by weakness. So human priests can appreciate what it is to be human. On account of this, he has to offer for sins, as for the people, so also for himself. And no one obtains this esteem for himself, but he who is called by Elohim, even as Aharon also was. So Aharon's lineage, Aaron, he was one of the Kohathites, like Korah was one of the Kohathites. But Yehovah had called Aaron's lineage by name to serve him in the priesthood. And that's the way that Yehovah wanted it done. He wanted the rest of the Kohathites to carry the Ark of the Covenant and all of the holy objects around. That's what their job was. But here we see, again, this differentiation between people obtaining the esteem for themselves, lifting themselves up before men's eyes, and those who are called by Elohim and are lifted up by Elohim in order to lead and serve his people. Exodus 2:13-14 says, and he went out the second day, talking about Moses when they're in Egypt, when the Israelites are in captivity. He saw two Hebrew men fighting, and he said to the one who did wrong, why did you smite your neighbor? And he said, who made you a head and a judge over us, a Rosh and a shoftim over us, a shafat, a judge? Who made you a rosh and a shafat over us? Okay, and at this point, Yehovah has not made Moses a head and a judge over the children of Israel. Next, he murders a man and he goes into exile, and it's from being in exile that Yehovah calls him and says, I want you to go and tell Pharaoh to free my people. So at this point, they're having exactly the same response to Moses. They're saying, who are you to be head and judge over us? And as I say, at this point, Yehovah has not made him head and judge of the people. But at the point that we see Korah and the other children of Israel rebelling against Moshe in this Torah portion, Yehovah has appointed Moshe, and he has appointed Aharon, both of whom they've come against. In Numbers 16 verse 3, we read their problem was, they said, all the congregation is holy, all of them. Yehovah is in their midst. Why then do you nasa yourselves above the assembly of Yehovah? Okay, very similar to what they said to him when they were in Egypt, only now Yehovah has nasad Moshe and Aharon. Very similar to what we see in Numbers 12 verse 2, where Miriam and Aaron are in rebellion. They've got a problem with Moshe. They said, has Yehovah spoken only through Moshe? Has he not also spoken through us? And Yehovah heard it. So we know that what they did and the mistakes that they made is a template for us to learn by. This is something which is kind of inherent in people. They see people in a position of leadership. They say, why are you in a position of leadership? Why have you lifted yourself up into this position? Are we not all holy? Does not Yehovah speak through all of us? But it's a misunderstanding. Yehovah has put things in place to work as he wants them to work, and in a way that he is going to work with. He puts people in positions of leadership so that he can work through them and thus serve people. But this is kind of, if you like, a natural reaction that people have to that. Does Yehovah only speak through Moshe? Are we not all holy? Verse 4 says, and when Moshe heard, he fell on his face and spoke to Korach and his company, saying, tomorrow morning Yehovah shall make known who is his and who is set apart. So this is something that we're going to see that is all the way through the scriptures. The Yehovah will make known those whom he has chosen. And he makes it clear to others. Okay? He'll make it known who is his and who is set apart and bring him near to him. Okay? He will karav to that person. We know that if we draw near to Yehovah, he draws near to us. But here, he's going to make known who he's chosen, who he is set apart. All the congregation are set apart, yes, but who is he set apart to this role? And let him bring near to him the one whom he chooses. And this is exactly what we're going to see. And this is a theme, as I say, that runs through all of these incidents all the way throughout Scripture, where Yehovah, where men are challenging the authority of Yehovah on earth, and Yehovah makes clear who it is that he has chosen. Do this, take fire holders, Korach and all your company, and put fire in them and put incense in them before Yehovah tomorrow, and it shall be the one whom Yehovah chooses is the set apart one. It's always struck me as funny here that Moses is telling them what to do. He's saying, okay, take fire holders, put incense in them, and then we'll see who Yehovah has chosen. And of course, they all go to do that thing which Moses has said. Enough of you, sons of Levi. So he says exactly the same phrase. He says, Rav lechem, you sons of Levi. Moshe said to Korach, hear now, you sons of Levi, Is it little to you that the Elohim of Yisrael has separated you from the congregation of Yisrael to bring you near to himself, to perform the service of the dwelling place of Yahovah, and to stand before the congregation to serve them? Remember what their job was. They had a role in the community. They were the ones who carried the menorah and the Ark of the Covenant, the golden altar of incense, the table of showbread, the bronze laver, the bronze altar. They carried these holy items which were integral to this service being done. But this is the job that they were given by Yahovah. And Moses says, is that of little account to you? Do you think that the very role that Yahovah has given you himself is not worth doing, that you want something for yourselves? He says, and that he has brought you near to himself, you and all your brothers, the sons of Levi with you, yet you seek the priesthood as well. Therefore, you and all your company are set against Yahovah. And Aaron, what is he that you grumble against him? Okay, yes, Yahovah has given him the priesthood, but why are you grumbling against Aaron? And there's an important lesson in this for us also. Okay, we know that we are a body, and each member of the body has the role that that member of the body has. And usually when we talk about these sort of things, we like to encourage people and say, listen, if you don't think that your role within the body is, some big deal, be assured that your body, your part in the body is vital, that it is an important part. Okay, but we should also take this into account. If we are to say that, and we are to say, well, my role within the body, that's not very much, is it? What do I do? Just this or just that? What we are actually doing is we are grumbling against Yahovah, and we are saying it is of little account that you have given me this role to do, whatever that role may be. And we can be assured that it is Yahovah who gives each of us our roles within the body. For as the body is one and has many members, but all the members of that body, being many, are one body, so also is the Messiah. For indeed by one Spirit we were all baptized into one body, whether Yahudim or Greeks, whether slaves or free, and we were all made to drink into one Spirit. For indeed the body is not one member, but many. If the foot says, because I'm not a hand, I do not belong to the body, does it therefore not belong to the body? This is what Korach was doing. He was saying, I don't want to be a hand. I don't want to carry these holy items. What I want to be is the arm. I want to be the one who's doing the sacrifices. If the ear says, because I'm not an eye, I do not belong to the body, does it therefore not belong to the body? For if all the body was an eye, where would be the hearing? Who are we to say, oh, you want hearing? Well, I don't think that hearing is of very much account. You might need somebody to do that job, but I don't think it's of very much account. What I want is a greater role within the body. And this is often, in my experience, what underlies rebellion. People looking at a role in the body that they want and saying, this is what I want to take for myself, or that we want to take for ourselves. I don't want a job that Yahovah has given me. It is of little account. If all the body was an eye, where would be the hearing? If all hearing, where would be the smelling? But now Elohim has set the members, each one of them in the body, even as he pleased. That's what he'd done to Korah. He said, you're a son of Kohath, you do this job. He set them in the body as he pleased. He selected Moses, even though Moses couldn't speak very well. And he selected Aaron to do the job that Aaron did. Because it's Yahovah that we're talking about. He can set the jobs in the body. It's not for us to rebel against that and say, no, I want that for myself. If they had all been one member, where would the body be? Okay, if everyone had been priests, who would have carried the Ark of the Covenant? And now there are indeed many members, but one body. And an eye is unable to say to the hand, I have no need of you, or again the head to the feet, I have no need of you. Numbers 26 gives us more details. It says, the sons of Eliav, Nemuel and Dathan and Avran. I'm not sure if Nemuel is Owen, by a different name, could be. This Dathan and Avram, who were Kariei Edah, called ones of the congregation, who contended against Moshe and against Aharon in the company of Korach, when they contended against Yehovah. This is what they were doing by looking at Moses and Aaron and saying, no, we want to be priests, we want to do this. Who are you? Are we not all holy? Has Yehovah not worked through all of us? The earth opened its mouth and swallowed them up together with Korach when that company died, when the fire consumed 250 men, and they became a sign. But the sons of Korach did not die. Okay, his sons actually went on to write a handful of the Psalms. Verse 12 of Numbers 16 says, and Moshe sent to Dathan and Aviram, the sons of Eliav. Again, notice here he doesn't send to this Nemuel or On. Maybe he did also, but it's not detailed here. The sons of Eliav, but they said, we are not coming up. What they actually say in the Hebrew is, we are not going to Allah, that word which means to ascend, the Olah, the ascending offering, the burnt offering. We are not going to Allah, they say, which is striking, given that last week it says they rose up early in the morning, they went to the top of the mountain and they said, see, we have indeed sinned, but we shall Allah. Okay, to the place where Yehovah has spoken of. So when they want to Allah, they will Allah. When they don't want to Allah, they will not Allah. They are not submitted to Yehovah. What they want to do is Allah on their own terms and become Nasi'eh, those who are lifted up. But they do not want to Allah at the word of Moshe. Is it little that you have brought us up out of a land flowing with milk and honey to kill us in the wilderness, that you would also seize total rule over us? Okay, so they're saying, look, Egypt was a good place for us. Is it not enough that you've brought us out of Egypt to kill us in the wilderness? Because remember what it would be like to their perspective. Okay, they've just been told, you're not going to the land that's been promised to you. You're going to die in the wilderness. Okay, and rebellion comes up today when people are told, listen, this is not good for you. You are going to die. What they would rather do is say, let's appoint a leader for ourselves. Let's appoint a teacher who's going to tickle our ears and tell us that everything's okay. Okay, we don't want to go after Moshe and Aharon, who are just trying to seize total rule over us, whilst also telling us that we're going to die in the wilderness, because there's that friction there, that tension where they don't want to follow the word of Yehovah, Allah at his command, not Allah at his command. What they want to do is go off and do their own thing. Okay, they say, you are trying to seize total rule over us. Also, you have not brought us into a land flowing with milk and honey, nor given us the inheritance of fields and vineyards. Would you bore out the eyes of these men? We are not coming up. And what that seems to me to be saying is, are you going to bore out their eyes so they can't see what you're doing to them? Do you not think that we can all see that you've not led us to a land of honey, milk and honey? Do you not think that we can all see that you are just trying to seize rule over us in the wilderness? Are you going to bore out the eyes of these men? I don't think it's literally what Moses would have done. Verse 15 says, and Moshe became very displeased and said to Yehovah, do not respect their offering. I have not taken one donkey from them, nor have I done harm to any of them. So he says, this incense which they're going to bring before you, do not accept it at their hand. I have done no harm to them. They're making all of these accusations that I want to seize rule over them, but I've never done any actual harm to any of them. I've never taken any of their stuff. Jude 8 to 19, there's only one chapter of Jude, says, in the same way, indeed, these dreamers defile the flesh and reject authority, and they speak evil of esteemed ones, these ones who are rebels. I've used this picture of a surly child because in my mind, this is how these people look to Yahovah. They speak evil of those whom Yahovah esteems. But Michael, the archangel, in contending with the devil, when he disputed about the body of Moshe, presumed not to bring against him a blasphemous accusation and said, Yahovah rebuke you. So this is what we're to do. This is what we were looking at in the first part. We leave it in Yahovah's hands. Okay, we say, if it's of Yahovah, it will succeed. If it's not of Yahovah, then it's going to fail. But we don't bring a blasphemous accusation, especially not against those whom Yahovah has esteemed. But these blaspheme that which they do not know, and that which they know naturally, like unreasoning beasts. In these they corrupt themselves. These rebel sorts are very free to speak evil of esteemed ones. What they understand naturally, it's like they're just trying to seize control of us. Woe to them, because they've gone in the way of Cain and gave themselves to the delusion of Balaam for a reward and perished in the rebellion of Korach. These are rocky reefs in your love feast, feasting with you, feeding themselves without fear, waterless clouds borne about by the winds, late autumn trees without fruit, twice dead, pulled up by the roots. I found a reference, I think it's Jeremiah 23:15 this week, if people want to understand waterless clouds elsewhere in the scripture. Wild waves of the sea foaming up their own shame, straying stars for whom blackness of darkness is kept forever. And again, this isn't their eternal punishment. This is them choosing darkness over light. So the blackness of darkness is kept forever for them. This is what they have chosen. And Henoch, the seventh from Adam, that's Enoch, also prophesied of these, saying, see, Yahovah comes with his myriad of holy ones to execute judgment on all, to punish all who are wicked among them, concerning all their wicked works which they've committed in a wicked way, and concerning all the harsh words with which wicked sinners have spoken against him. Again, we see them coming against Moses and Aaron is actually them coming against Yahovah. So in such a situation, we don't speak blasphemous words. We say, Yahovah rebuke you, as we see he will. These are grumblers, complainers, who walk according to their own lusts, and according to their own lusts gather up teachers who will tickle their ears, and their mouth speaks proudly, admiring faces of others, which is to show partiality to people who are lifted up by men, to the nassier of men, if you like, admiring the faces of others for the sake of gain. But you, beloved ones, remember the words spoken before by the apostles of our Lord Yeshua Messiah, because they told you that there would be mockers in the last time who would walk according to their own wicked lusts. The apostles said this. The only apostle that ever said that was Paul, who said, in the last time, there are people who will walk according to their own lusts, who will gather teachers to themselves, tickling their ears. These are the ones who cause divisions, not having the Spirit. Okay? And we're told why. Because they go after their own lusts. They go after these things like natural, unreasoning beasts, speaking evil of esteemed ones. And we're told this is exactly like Korah. So when we look at Korah now, and what becomes of Korah when Yahovah shows who is his and who isn't, remember these things. These are his operating principles. These are the things he's driven by. In 1 Samuel 12:3-6, it says, look, here I am, witness against me before Yahovah and before his anointed. Whose ox have I taken, or whose donkey have I taken, or whom have I oppressed? So this person here, this is the prophet Samuel who's speaking. He's speaking very similar words to those that Moshe has just spoken when he said, do not accept their offering. Whose donkey have I taken, or whom have I oppressed? Okay, The prophet Samuel here is an interesting character because he's actually a descendant of Korah. Okay, we've read before in years past, 1 Samuel 15, with the incident with Saul, where Saul is in rebellion, and he says rebellion is as witchcraft. And I would recommend to people to read through 1 Samuel 15 and compare it to the events with Korah. I'm not going to do that again this year, but we see Samuel in a very similar position to Moses, who's speaking the word of Elohim. He speaks these words, and he actually, as it turns out, he's a Levite and he's a descendant of Korah. He says, whom have I abused, or from whose hand have I received any bribe with which to blind my eyes? Again, I would connect that with the idea of boring out the eyes of these men. Then I restore it to you. And they said, you have not oppressed us or abused us, nor have you taken any bribe from anyone's hand, just like Moses. So he said to them, Yehovah is witness against you, and his anointed is witness today, that you have found naught in my hand. And they answered, he is witness. So again, we've got this theme that you'll see in all of these accounts where Yehovah is witness as to who he is appointed, or whom he is appointed, and whom he has not. And they answered, he is witness. And Shemuel said to the people, it is Yehovah who appointed Moshe and Aharon, and who brought your fathers up from the land of Mitzrayim. So there are connections all the way throughout the story of Samuel with Korah, Samuel, Korah's descendant, in the position of Moshe. 1 Samuel 15:28 is one verse that I'll highlight. Shemuel said to him, Yehovah has torn the kingdom of Israel from you today and has given it to a neighbor of yours better than you. What we're going to see with Moses is that the priesthood is not in Korah's hand, and he's given the priesthood to those better than Korah. But we always have this theme of Yehovah showing who it is whom he has chosen. Then Moshe said to Korach, tomorrow you and all your company shall be there before Yehovah, you and they and Aharon. And they each one take his fire holder, and you shall put incense in it, and let each one bring his fire holder before Yehovah. Let him draw near with it before Yehovah. 255 fire holders, and you and Aaron, each one with his fire holder. We see something. We see the outcome of this event and what it is to come before Yehovah, to draw near before him with incense when one is not the one Yehovah has chosen to do that. We see this with Nadav and Abihu. They were actually the sons of Aaron, but Yehovah is very precise. He wants the high priest to come in with incense before him, not just a son of Aaron himself, or the actual high priest himself. Like Korah is in the same family group. He's a Levite. He's in the same family group. He's a Kohathite, but he's not the high priest. So Nadav and Abihu, the sons of Aharon, each one took his fire holder and put fire in it and put incense on it and brought strange fire before Yehovah, which he had not commanded them. That's unlawful fire. That's what that word, zur, strange, the English translation there. And fire came out from Yehovah and consumed them, and they died before Yehovah. So we see this idea of fire coming out from before Yehovah. It's not the only way he punishes people, just as when Gamliel is talking about this person went off and those people who followed him, he died and they were all scattered. That's not definitely going to be the outcome. Okay, Yehovah will work as he will, just as we see in 1 Chronicles 26 with King Uzziah. When he had become stronger, his heart was lifted up to his destruction, for he trespassed against Yehovah's Elohim by entering the temple of Yehovah to burn incense on the altar of incense. And Azayahu the priest went in after him, and with him were 80 priests of Yehovah who were brave men. And they stood up against King Uzziyahu and said to him, "It is not for you, Uzziyahu, to burn incense to Yehovah, but for the priests, the sons of Aaron, who are set apart to burn incense. Get out of the set apart place, for you have trespassed, and there is no esteem to you from Yehovah Elohim." And Uzziyahu was wroth, and he had the censer in his hand to burn incense. While he was wroth with the priests, Sara'at broke out on his forehead. So the punishment for King Uzziyahu was different than it was for Nadab and Abihu, was different than it will be for Korach, because Yehovah will bring about his will, and he will do whatever is just to him. Just like when we see the Philistines taking the Ark of the Covenant, they're not punishment. Their punishment is not the same as when the ark is being moved and someone who is not a Levite of the children of Israel reaches out and puts their hand on the ark and they're struck dead. Even though they've done the same thing, arguably the Philistines have done worse. Yehovah does what is in accordance with his will. He brings about his will on the earth, and he does what is just. Verse 18 says, "So each one took his fire holder and put fire in it and laid incense on it," just like Nadab and Abihu, "and stood at the door of the tent of witness with Moshe and Aharon." Okay, so arguably what King Uzziyahu did was worse. He went into the temple and he went up to the golden altar to burn incense on it with his fire holder. Arguably, to the way that we would look at it, we might say it's worse. The way that Yehovah looked at it, he doled out the punishment that he thought just. And Korach assembled all the congregation against them at the door of the tent of witness. Then the esteem of Yehovah appeared to all the congregation. And we'll see this idea of all the congregation. Was it all the congregation? Do you think Joshua and Caleb were there assembled against Moshe? The word all doesn't always mean all. Exodus 30 verse 7 tells us what is correct. Aharon shall burn on it sweet incense morning by morning. As he tends to the lamps, he burns incense on it. So it's Aharon who is to burn incense to Yehovah, the high priest, not his sons, not Korah, not anyone else. In Leviticus 16:11-13 it says, "And Aharon shall bring the bull of the sin offering, which is for himself, and make atonement for himself and for his house, and shall slaughter the bull as the sin offering, which is for himself, and shall take a fire holder filled with burning coals of fire from the altar before Yehovah, with his hands filled with sweet incense beaten fine, and shall bring it inside the veil. And he shall put the incense on the fire before Yehovah, and the cloud of incense shall cover the lid of atonement, which is on the witness on the ark, lest he die." So Aaron himself is warned, do things precisely this way. Only do it on Yom Kippur. Then take it from the altar, burn the incense, and come in before me with your fire holder. And the reason is, lest he die, which is what happens to Nadab and Abihu, and is what will happen to Korah. And Yehovah spoke to Moshe and to Aharon, saying, "Separate yourselves from the midst of this congregation, and let me consume them in a moment." But they fell on their faces and said, "O El, Elohim of all the spirits of all flesh, when one man sins, are you wroth with all the congregation?" Okay, which is interesting because we see with Achan that indeed Yehovah is wroth with all the congregation. Here they're making intercession for the congregation. Yehovah spoke to Moshe saying, "Speak to the congregation saying, move away from around the tents of Korach, Dathan, and Aviram." So Moshe rose up and went to Dathan and Aviram, and the elders of Israel followed him. And he spoke to the congregation, saying, "Please turn away from the tents of these wrong men. Do not touch whatever belongs to them, lest you be consumed in all their sins." Then they moved away from around the tents of Korach, Dathan, and Aviram. And Dathan and Aviram came out and stood at the door of their tents with their wives, their sons, and their little children, which is actually the same people who get killed when Achan sins. Although Yehovah is wroth with all the congregation, that's where the punishment falls. So they're told, move away from their tents. And they all come out, and they're all stood at their tents with their kids, with their wives. What's going on? Moshe said, by this you know that Yehovah has sent me to do all these works, that they are not from my own heart. If these die as all men do, or if they are visited as all men are visited, then Yehovah has not sent me. But if Yehovah creates what is unheard of, and the earth opens its mouth and swallows them up with all that belongs to them, and they go down alive into Sheol, then you shall know that these men have spurned Yehovah. So again, Yehovah is going to show who is his. It came to be, as he ended speaking all these words, that the ground under them split apart. The earth opened its mouth and swallowed them up with all their households and all the men with Korach and all their goods. And they and all those with them went down alive into Sheol, and the earth closed over them, and they perished from the midst of the assembly. That word's different. That's the kahal, okay? Those that Yehovah has called his kahal, different from the Edah, which is just a multitude of people. And all Israel who were about them fled at their cry, for they said, lest the earth swallows us up, which is probably a reasonable reaction when they've been told, move away from their tents. And then suddenly the earth opens up and swallows up all their tents. And they're like, oh, wait, they were serious. Move away from their tents. For people who wonder what Sheol is, okay, and anybody who has the normal conception in their minds of when you die, you go to heaven or you go to hell, okay, which is not what the Bible actually says, I would recommend watching this. Okay, there's a whole playlist on the channel called the Butchered Doctrine playlist. You want part 9, Life After Death, part 1, and part 2 of Life After Death as well. They'll explain what the Bible teaches about what happens when we die. So what we've just seen is the earth open up. Okay, it's just split up, and this is what has happened to Dathan and to Avram. Okay, this happened in the camp of Reuven. Okay, something other than that is also happening. As we're just reading through it, it can be easy to just not pick up on these differences. This happens in the camp of Reuben. What's happening outside the tabernacle, which is in the middle of all the tents, is something that's happening with Korah. So the punishment of Dathan and Avram and the punishment of Korah are actually separate from one another. And a fire came out from Yehovah and consumed the 250 men who were offering incense. And if that's not been pointed out, that these two things are separate, it can kind of sound like they're all together. The ground opened up and swallowed some of them, and then fire came and consumed the rest of them. That's not what happened. These are men who were somewhere else. They're outside the tabernacle. Fire comes down from Yehovah, and it consumes these 250 men who are with Korah, the ones who want the priesthood. Dathan and Avram's complaint is, you've led us away from a place that was good, and we're all going to die in the wilderness. That's their complaint. Korah's complaint is, we want the priesthood. Why are we not doing the priest things? Why are we just carrying the ark and things like that? Acts 5:34-38, again, the words of Gamliel. For before these days, Todah rose, claiming to be somebody, just like Korach did. A number of men, about 400, did join him, just like the 250 who joined Korah. He was slain, and all who obeyed him were dispersed and came to naught. After him, Yehudah of Galil rose up in the days of the census and drew away many people after him. He also perished, and all who obeyed him were scattered. Now I say to you Stay away from these men and leave them alone. Advice that it would have been good for Korah and Dathan and Abiram to follow when it comes to Moshe and Aaron. Because if this plan or if this work is of men, it shall be overthrown. So again, Yehovah shows that which is of him and that which is of men. And Yehovah spoke to Moshe, saying, say to Eleazar, son of Aaron the priest, to pick up the fire holders out of the blaze, for they are set apart, and scatter the fire some distance away. The fire holders of these men who sinned has been sanctified by the cost of their soul. So we see this idea of people or things being made holy by the price of their soul. Something which may well fit into the idea of people who need to have their heads nasad, their heads lifted up in the time of the end, that they are perhaps made holy by the price of their souls, and that is how that would work in terms of Torah. Let them be made into beaten plates as a covering for the altar, because they brought them before Yehovah. There they are set, and therefore they are set apart. Let them become a sign to the children of Israel. Because they came before Yehovah into his presence with these things, they've been made set apart. Beat them out, make a covering for the altar, and it will be a sign to the rest of the children of Israel, so that they remember, like our tzitzit, so we remember to do the commands. And Eleazar, the priest, took the bronze fire holders, which those who were burned up had brought, and they were beaten out as a covering on the altar, a remembrance to the children of Israel, that no stranger who is not of the seed of Aaron should come near to offer incense before Yehovah, and not be like Korach and his company, as Yehovah had said to him through Moshe. Deuteronomy 7, 8-13 gives us a piece of the Torah which shows us a principle of Yehovah's justice, something which Korah and Dathan and Abiram and those people who were rebelling against Moses and Aaron were in contradiction to. It says, when any matter arises which is too hard for you to judge, between blood and blood, between plea and plea, or between stroke and stroke, matters of strife within your gates, then you shall rise up and go to the place which Yehovah your Elohim chooses, and shall come to the priests, the Levites. Moses was a Levite, he also acted as priest, and to the judge who is in those days, okay, the leadership. They'll come to the leadership, and they shall inquire, and they shall declare to you the word of judgment, or the word of justice, the word of mishpat, devar mishpat. And you shall do according to the word which they declare to you from that place which Yehovah chooses, and you shall guard to do according to all that they instruct you. Okay? Korah, Dathan, Abiram, they weren't doing this. They knew the word which they had been instructed to do, and they decided to do their own thing. Do according to the Torah in which they teach you, according to the mishpat which they say to you. You do not turn to the right or to the left from the word which they declare to you. Obviously, this is something that Korah has broken. The man who acts arrogantly so is not to listen to the priest who stands to serve before Yehovah, or the Levite, or the judge before Yehovah your Elohim, or to the judge. That man shall die. So you shall purge the evil from Israel. What happened to Korah? Okay, he came and he challenged the Levite. He challenged the judge, Moses, a Levite and a judge of the people. He challenged Aaron, the priest. What happened to him? He was killed to purge the evil from Israel. Let all the people hear and fear, and no longer do arrogantly, which is exactly what we see when the fire holders of the men who had rebelled in such a way were beaten out to be a witness to the people. But all the congregation of the children of Israel grumbled against Moshe and against Aaron on the next day, saying, You have killed the people of Yehovah. Again, the word kal in Hebrew is translated as all, but kal doesn't literally mean every single one. As I said, I bet Joshua and Caleb weren't there. I bet there were loads of the people of the congregation who weren't there. But it's stated as kal, the congregation, kal ha-edah, came to grumble against Moshe and against Aharon on the next day. Okay, it's important when we consider certain verses, like people have a mistranslation of test all things, as if every single thing needs to be tested. It's a mistranslation. What it's saying is test the prophecies, but even if it was saying to test all things, it wouldn't be saying literally every single thing in existence, you must test it. And there are many such scriptures. We should remember when we read all of something that it's not always saying every single one. All in English means something different from kal in Hebrew. And it came to be when the congregation assembled against Moshe and against Aharon and against Yehovah, that they turned toward the tent of witness, and see the cloud covered it, and the esteem of Yehovah appeared. And Moshe and Aharon came before the tent of witness. So what we're going to see again is that Yehovah is going to make clear who it is that he has chosen for the priesthood. Yehovah spoke to Moshe, saying, "Arise from the amidst this congregation, let me consume them in a moment." And they fell on their faces. And Moshe said to Aharon, "Take the fire holder, put fire in it from the altar, lay incense on it, and go, hurry to the congregation, make atonement for them, for wrath has gone out from Yehovah, the plague has begun." And Aharon took it as Moshe commanded, and ran into the midst of the assembly, and saw that the plague had begun among the people. And he laid on the incense and made atonement for the people, and stood between the dead and the living. So Yehovah is making clear here those who are walking correctly and those who are not. Just like those men who rose up and they died, and the people who followed them were scattered. Yehovah is well able to make known who it is that he has appointed. Okay? Of course, also here we have a great picture of Aharon, the high priest, as our high priest, as Yeshua, who is described as a judge between the living and the dead. Those who died in the plague were 14,700, besides those who died on account of Korach. So it'd actually be 14,950 with the 250 men who were with Korach. Then Aharon returned to Moshe at the door of the tent of witness, for the plague had stopped. And we've covered before how plagues sent by Yehovah punish the wrongdoers. Okay, not just people indiscriminately. It's another thing where Yehovah makes clear those who are walking correctly and those who are not walking correctly. And we'll see a further example of that in the third part. Come back then.